the innovation is kind of sequential. I think what I appreciate about Indaba is that willingness to say, okay, we understand this is where we are from a technology perspective, whether we're looking at AI, quantum, or other technology areas, but that willingness to take a step back, as Germa was saying, and look at, what is the actual problem that we're trying to solve here? What do we have from a context perspective that is either a constraint or an opportunity that we can leverage to solve this particular problem differently. And so it's a different then perspective in terms of the approach in solving some of these problems. And you always walk away as somebody that is from or working in the commercial research space, really starting to question some of the things that we are doing as well from a research perspective, and taking a bit of a step back and saying, could we be approaching things a bit differently? So it's that spirit of really innovating, but frugal innovation, and the willingness to deconstruct problems and approach problems from a different vantage point, and then developing methods and technologies in a way that is different from what may be mainstream at that particular moment. And so I think for us, from a research perspective, particularly in industry, it's quite important for us to be part of Indaba, to just get that different perspective when it comes to the problems that we are trying to solve with technology on the continent and globally. The other thing is, just from a talent perspective, I think several of the speakers have already mentioned it. One thing that is really great about Indaba is just the people. So getting a sense of, the kind of work that students at all levels are doing in the space is really also refreshing to kind of see, getting the opportunity to mentor some of the students, to even identify students that are working in specific areas for whom we would like to maintain contact with. I think just the exposure to the talent that we have on the continent, specifically in the areas of machine learning and AI, is another great reason why we continue to support the conference and the other efforts that we have in terms of the local components of the deep learning Indaba. So I think from my aspect, it's those points around different perspective and also the talent.
Okay, thank you so much. So I have taken notes of all your very good points. So you have mentioned one very important topic that everybody has mentioned is the people at the center, right? So in terms of research, in terms of capacity building, in terms of network, we are here because of the people, right? Another thing is putting the problem. We are here to solve problems, not just to be in a race, as Magdalena was saying, as Germa was saying, as Sibu was saying. All of you were mentioning that, right? So now maybe we can be a bit more specific to try to advance in our collective activities. So if we go into the topic of research specifically, okay, do you think that having different kinds of academic papers would be something that would help? Something much more to the point, like shorter, more focused on the impact. Do you think that there is a room for that or not? Or do you have anything in mind, like also for all of you, but for Yanis and Magdalena, for anybody who wants to go can go, or I can also choose.
I can start. I can start. So are you speaking about in context of Indaba or just in general for African science?
In general. Also like in ACM, in Nature, in ICHKAI, in Indaba, everywhere.
Yeah, so I think it is massively important for us to look at and take advantage of different modes of getting our work and our science out there. We're seeing a lot more in podcasts, whether it's interview style or someone else kind of speaks about their work. So yes, there's the core scientific publication that you should publish. You should have that peer review and that feedback about your work, but that doesn't translate to how my mom interprets what AI is doing for us and how it impacts her life, both good and bad, beyond perception. So I think it's actually important to, yesterday, start leveraging other modes to communicate the science out there. So yes, you do the publication. You also have an opportunity to blog. You can do your own podcast. Find someone to podcast with. Find multiple modes of ways to connect with people so they don't feel so isolated of this new technology that also comes with a little bit of fear, right? I think we need to be very inclusive on the conversation about it.
Both Benji and Virginia want to speak?
I think it's very difficult, right? So there's a whole lot of factors that we've got to balance here. I mean, even just ignoring the African context, there's so much going on in the AI space that it's difficult to think about what is the right way of communicating, like what's happening. And then it's just, there's all these extra layers when we take the African context into account. So I always think about science, you know, the two important things you've got to do are do the science and then communicate the science.
Right.
And there seems to be a trend these days where, you know, we've gone from, you know, kind of computer science as a field, moving very early on from the journal model to the conference model as being the main way of getting our stuff out there. And then somehow we then moved on to the publish on archive model, and then the publish all your results on Twitter model, which, you know, is great if you've got all the funding you need and the job security you need, and millions and millions of followers. But it's still challenging if you live in a reality where, you know, for many of us in Africa particularly, but I think all over the world even, you know, there's very particular metrics that feel like they were set 1,000 years ago that dictate how your promotions work and that sort of thing. And so trying to balance these two aspects is very important. So, you know, just for us, particularly in South Africa, but I think in many countries, if you're focusing on conference papers, you don't get the same recognition for that as journals. And so you've got to have fights all the time around this, which adds more complexities to your already very busy life. But the other side of this is really around that kind of impact on the communication. So I remember very clearly at the very first Indaba, we were walking around the poster session, and we'd made this whole fuss about how there'd never been an African institution paper at NeurIPS before. And walking around with Nando de Freitas, who'd actually many years before graduated from my university, he was kind of blown away. He said, wow, there's so much amazing work here, but it's like the whole continent has a serious case of imposter syndrome, that everyone does this work and then just hides to themselves and communicates with only their two best friends. And I think like there's a whole lot of these challenges that relate to each other that we've got to address.
Right, thank you, Virginia.
I think that fundamentally we are in a moment in which we really need, as a scientific community, not only in AI, but in general, as an academic community, we need to really fundamentally rethink the whole publication and communication issues. What's happening at this moment, unfortunately, with big journals, with big conferences, is ChatGPT is writing the papers, ChatGPT is reviewing the papers, and ChatGPT is summarizing the papers because none of us can read all the new research that's happening. At the end of the day, the only one who is gaining and learning anything is OpenAI. It's none of us. And this comes from this publish and perish type of environment in which we are, like you say, our universities, our peers judge by the number of publications, by the value of our publications, but no one is really learning from that. I think that communication, and fully agree with you that there are many other venues for communication, but we need to go much more finding out, and I don't have the answers, but maybe the Indaba is one of the possible answers. We need to move into a ways in which we really can communicate in a direct way between each other, learn from each other, taking the time and opportunity to together look at the science that is being done, exploring new ways outside of the traditional venues. And at the same time, we also need to start an important conversation, and I think, and I thank Madeleine and Yanis for being here as large publishing venues in computer science and in science in general. We really need to start rethinking publishing and science communication from the very meaning of what we are doing, and then get our universities and our the ones who are judging our work, the funders, to understand that there is more to it, and that the publications per se are not necessarily the way that we need to go.
Thank you, Virginia. So Magdalena and Yannis.
Georgina,
sorry.
I think Magdalena and Yanis.
Magdalena, please.
Shall I go now?
Yeah, please.
Okay, great, thank you. Some really terrific comments were made already, and I agree essentially with all of them. Let me just add a couple of things from my perspective. So the first thing that I would say is, I think all of us, and by that I really mean the community, which includes all of you, researchers, practitioners, but also me as an editor and publishers, as well as funders, need to understand that there isn't just one type of paper published in a journal. There are many different types of papers, many different types of contributions. You know, just to illustrate this point, once upon a time, so Nature's been around for a very long time, over 150 years, and once upon a time, the types of papers that we were publishing in Nature were all essentially the same. They were describing some fundamental discovery, which was really quite often quite esoteric and fundamental, and that was it. That is definitely not the only type of contribution which we publish today. We publish very practical, very functionally oriented, implementation oriented papers, which has a number of interesting follow-up implications. For example, an example which is not close to your area of expertise, but close to where most of you are geographically, during the pandemic, we published probably the first paper in Nature, which was entirely authored by authors based in Rwanda. And the reason why we published that paper is because that paper described research, which was focusing on collecting data on the ground, providing real solutions on the ground in a low resource setting. And it was a real model for other settings to implement. Of course, the exact details are very different from what you are focusing on, but the principle is absolutely portable. So a very different type of contribution. Others have already spoken about the importance of diversity of communicating this research. Preprints were mentioned. This is something that, you know, for us, for example, at Nature, we actually actively encourage our authors to share preprints before they submit papers to us. It's so important to have that level of exchange and contribution, and ideally conversation that is recorded in the community. Other type of communication, exactly, so that everyone to whom AI tools or the results of implementation of these AI tools are relevant understands the potential benefits and pitfalls. There are always pluses and minuses to any solution. And the other thing I will say is, so I completely agree with the comments that were made about the very tight coupling of evaluation of researchers in academia with publication output. I think that's a known problem and much discussed for a very long time. It's something that we at Nature have written about for a very long time, certainly predates me in my current role. There are so many other contributions researchers make to the research ecosystem, which should be taken into consideration. But in the context that we're discussing here, what's really interesting, and the panel there in the room illustrates this very beautifully, that the research and the advances in this area are not just made by researchers in an academic setting. Of course, private sector setting, you know, Sibu is nodding, one example, that there are others here. And that collaboration, I think, is really important. I alluded to this in my first comments, that to my mind, African research in this space perhaps is leading in how collaborative it is with many different stakeholders, academics, more private sector, small scale players, but also the community. I think that's really important, and that will help in communicating the research. The very final thing I will say is, perhaps unsurprisingly, as an editor of a journal, I will stress the importance of formal publication associated with peer review. In the context of AI tool development, perhaps more so than in many other contexts, many of the fears are associated with the black box property of the tools that are being developed. So the greater transparency we have around what is being developed and how it's being developed, the better off we as a community, in the largest sense, are going to be. Thank you.
Yanis, do you want to?
Yeah, I meant to say a few things, and now the more I hear, the more the things that I need to say, building up on what was discussed. I'll try to kind of consolidate everything. I'll mention, I don't know what scholarly communication, which is what we are discussing here in scientific scholarly communication, will look like in 5 or 10 years, but I'm very sure, and I predict that it won't be what it is right now. With the 20,000 submissions to NeurIPS and the 5,000 submissions to other computing conferences, and being evaluated not because some committee read their contributions, but because some committee counted how many publications they have and what is their H index and their Y index and so on. And I mentioned the term earlier, but I think open science is a movement that is about 20 years old now, and it's across all sciences, not just computing or not just AI, and it's changing the way we think of the research endeavor. It's changing the way we go through the research life cycle, opening everything up, everything in quotes, so that we achieve the more collaboration, the more innovation, the more contribution to society, and being more transparent and trustworthy. And open science affects many ways, and I believe Indaba is right in the spirit of this open science. That's why I'm really upset that I cannot be there. But it has captured the spirit, whether willingly, whether consciously or not. But this is the kind of instrument in the hands of open science. Benji mentioned about the history of what we consider very early on conference publications. We are the only field that has the concept of a conference publication. No other scientific field has this. Publications are in journals. And I think we are mature enough now to behave like all other sciences and go to journals, have the peer review process that Magdalena mentioned. And I think it is a very important element to be examined as well. I mean, nothing is holy and untouchable, but we should be publishing in journals, but we should be publishing the important contributions, not the esoteric ones like the early Nature publications that Magdalena mentioned it, but it should be your contributions. How many really significant contributions can you make in a year? 1, 2, half? Certainly not the 10s and 20s and 50s that people are doing now, which are not publications in my mind. And Renji said, you publish on archive or on Twitter, these are not publications, these are blog posts. And yes, I call them expositions. Yes, you can, you sneeze, you can expose. Like you say on Instagram, you know, the generation, not mine, but the next one or the one after that. Oh, I sneezed, here is my sneeze, and I sneezed again, and here it is. These deltas and epsilon little works, they are very useful. Expose them, fine, as fast as possible. But when it comes to collectively and tell the world officially, here is something that moved the science ahead, moved society ahead, then when it comes to publish, and this publication should be in journals. For conferences, we should come to talk. Conferences should be to confer, not to publish, not even to present kind of presentations that I mentioned elsewhere. We have to change our mentality. And now I'll come back to I think Eugenia mentioned it, and I absolutely agree. Why do we do it this way? Because assessment is by counting. Well, we have to change the assessment to bring it back into reading. You read a few things, you cannot read everything. And assessment should be done on a very few important publications that should be done in journals, and then a committee should read and then assess you. And of course, you cannot do this unilaterally. Nobody can do anything until everybody agrees to do that thing. And there are efforts. I don't know if there is anything in Africa. Benji, I think, mentioned, but you know, in the African continent, most places don't recognize conference publications. And I put them in quotes because I think we should move away from that concept. But in Europe, there is COARA, which is the Coalition of Open Access Research Assessment. And there are more than 500 universities that are working on saying, how should research be assessed for an individual researcher, but also for a department and university and so on, in the era of open science, which promotes the spirit that I mentioned. Also, CRA in the US is making a similar effort for computing and informing deans and funders and so on. So all of us have to work together to get out of this paper mill situation, which also pushes people to break the rules. We have a collusion network, we have reviewer coercion, always to get more papers, to get more things. We have an opportunity to break this. We have an opportunity to follow open science. And again, the experience of Indaba can teach a lot of things in this direction.
Sibu, can Sibu look for it?
Maybe just the last one, and I'll be brief. I think the other speakers have covered it well already. I think Aisha was mentioning finding ways or various ways to communicate about our work. And I think one important thing, especially for us as younger researchers, specifically in the audience, is finding ways to also communicate to the stakeholders for whom the research matters. I'm thinking, yes, we publish in our scientific journals, but often you need to transform that information if you want to now address it to our policymakers. And I think most often we stop with the scientific publication and don't go the extra mile, to whom does this research matters, and I think we have the opportunity to do that, especially when you're looking at a lot of the work that is being done in Indaba, for example, where there's implications for agriculture, for climate adaptation, etc., or issues that are critical when it comes from in terms of policy, specifically in the various countries. So I think that's one aspect that we tend to neglect as scientists. How do we transform our findings and communicate that to either the communities or to the stakeholders or key decision makers for whom the work that we've done actually has a contribution to make. So I think that's the only other additional point that I wanted to make. Obviously, it's becoming more and more important, specifically when you are also one of the things that you have to do as a researcher is looking for funding. And often there's a question around what has been the value or the impact of the work that you're doing. And there is scientific impact, of course, but I think there's also an extra step that we can take to really ensure that the work that we're doing has impact at the end of the day towards the challenges or the problems that we're trying to solve.
Thanks. I want to, I definitely agree with what's been said. I want to pick up on something that Giannis said that I liked about conferences are for conferring. And, you know, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about another big issue that I think we have, which is around how the community gets to come together. And there's many effects here. So I often think about one of the advantages you've got if you're in the Northern Hemisphere is you're in this kind of east-west academic trade routes, that if you're sitting in any kind of major center, like it's quite easy to have a lot of people moving through and giving talks all the time, and just having a lot of opportunities to exchange ideas with people more than outside of the corridor that you're sitting in. But that's really difficult for us in Africa. I mean, you know, definitely when we started the Indaba, there was only a handful of places. Now there's a lot of places doing interesting work. But if you then start kind of narrowing it down to specific areas, there's only a handful in any particular topic. And getting people to actually spend time together, like you can do, you know, obviously virtual talks and things, and that's very doable. But firstly, to actually spend time together is really difficult in Africa. The travel's expensive, flights aren't like well connected, visas can be a complete pain and really complicated. And that's before you even try and go to international conferences. So, you know, we look at conferences, often you get a paper accepted there. If someone can't present it in person, the paper gets rejected. Now, the amount of money that it takes to get to one of those conferences can be like all of the budgets that an academic has over like a 2-year period in Africa. Right, this is like really, really a non-trivial problem. We were supported for a long time by Google's travel grants program. I'm not actually sure if that's still running, but that was a huge lifeline for us, even though that was kind of relatively still difficult funding to get. But, you know, and I think kind of where we're coming from in South Africa, we're still better off than in most places. But the reality of that means that even if you have a paper accepted or an opportunity to go somewhere to a big conference, like there's a very slim chance you'll be able to fund that, which also means that for a majority of like African researchers, they're never going to come face to face with the big names in their field, the people that they can have inspiring conversations with, that can push their research into different directions. So they're typically working very much in isolation. And you know, we have the same funding challenges around now, that all the big trends around open access journals, no one can afford to publish in an open access journal. Like that's just basically not possible for Africans. So, you know, we've got, again, all the cards stacked against us, which I think leads to more systemic problems around, again, you're a promising young researcher in a country where you're completely overloaded with work anyway, but you're really passionate about a topic. But in reality, there's no way you're going to be meeting up with your community every year. And maybe the Indaba is like the best you can do, and you find a sub-community here. But I think this is something really holding back the kind of the whole community in whatever discipline you're in.
Thank you so much. This is a key topic, right? Gamal.
It is a very, I know we spend some time on it, but just for us to appreciate how critical it is to communicate the right way, I would like to ask the audience actually a question. AI is changing and we have a lot of problems to solve. What do you think are the most critical issues for AI to be impactful on the ground? What are the 3 key challenges for AI to be impactful given the technology and the problem? I will tell mine, and let's see how we can align. The first layer usually is the implementation stage, the technical space, which most of us are here about. The second one is actually even more challenging, is the communication piece, because that helps us to collaborate, that helps us avoiding reinventing the wheel, which is most of the time a challenge. And the third piece is the policy and the politics of it. That helps us to share data, to build the technology responsible and in the legal framework. So Georgina mentioned communication, which is definitely much higher challenge than the implementation stage. But for that, as mentioned here, we need to have the informal and different channels how we communicate for the venues, the conferences, and the journals. But at the same time, what can we do really? Not the majority of people being affected by the technology who are going to make decisions are not in this room. What are we doing to communicate what we do in AI space to the other people sitting in non-profit, sitting in government organizations, and so on? So this is just to say, I cannot stress enough how important it is to communicate to each other using both traditional and informal channels, but at the same time, for us developers to modulate our communication differently for the different stakeholder. That's different for an academic versus a ministry in the government versus paper or journals we usually write in. So communication is again key. We need to be mindful about that going forward.
Thank you. Yanis, you raise your hand.
Yes. Before, let me answer the question. I believe I will put a technological problem here, and that's explainability. I think this is key to making go away out of the black box issue. I don't know if it can be, how soon it can be solved or to what extent it can be solved. But I think this is very important, affecting also the use of AI, getting rid of the fears against AI and injustices. So in that sense, responsible AI, and let me emphasize, responsible use of AI is key, and it will be affected by explainability. The responsibility, technology is one thing, but the use is the big element that we need to take care of. And industry and policymakers are the big protagonists. And they have to be, industry has to make the decisions on where to push their technologies and their applications. And we academics have to, and researchers have to be aware of the potential uses of what we are developing. And then policymakers to be responsible towards society. And unfortunately, not all policymakers care about that. And this is, I don't want to use the word fight, but this is a path that we have to be all working on, inform the policymakers to show them what good can be done by AI and avoid the pitfalls of AI. And with respect to the issues that Betty mentioned, and that was the first reason why I raised my hand. I understand the difficulties of Africa and many other parts of the world, actually. And I want to emphasize ACM Open, which is about open access. Open access is only a small part of open science, but the critical one, or if you want the front runner of open science is open access. And until open access and until ACM, by the way, ACM Open will open up its entire digital library for everyone to read free of charge, January 1st, 2026. This is a big step, a big bold move for ACM. No other publisher, for-profit or non-for-profit, has done that to the best of my knowledge. So everyone including everyone in Africa, will be able to read everything that is published in the HCM Digital Library, something that was not possible before. Now we have the problem that Benji mentioned, that whereas people could publish before in closed access, now they have to pay some fashion. Well, we have a model where people don't pay, but researchers, their organization, as long as they are affiliated with one, is being are the ones that are paid and that participate in the ACM Open model. And from Africa, 24 institutions from 7 or 8 countries have joined. So colleagues that are in these institutions can publish in open access without having to pay anything because their institutions have to pay. And hopefully more and more institutions will join. And of course there's special pricing, but even for, we care about the researcher, we care about the individual scientist. For many parts of the world that are in underprivileged parts in terms of finances, we want them to publish with ACM. And then there are even much reduced prices, even zero in several cases, where you can publish with ACM without having to pay anything. Have we covered everyone? Have we done everything that can be done? Not yet. We're working on it to even further reduce prices or even go to zero for everyone. But this is a big step that I think hopefully will help African colleagues to publish and be present in the ACM Digital Library.
Thank you so much, Yanis. This is great news. So we are 1 minute over time, I believe. So I'm sure that Frank also would like to say some words, but before maybe, can I just, okay, Frank, you go first, yes.
Thanks, Julia. So I agree with a lot of things, and I'm very happy with a lot of things that were said already about publications. I think the most important is that publications are a consequence of research that is supposed to impact the world. And we should try to find ways to give it that role back. It should not be the target, it should be a consequence of what we're doing, and helping the communities to move forward and not being a bottleneck on performing research or having careers. I think we heard a lot of things that actually support that kind of things. And although we don't have a ready-made solution for that, I think it's a good point to also start working on that. And maybe this is a good point to close this one. After the coffee break, we would love to hear the questions and remarks and ideas from the audience, and hopefully some of the people online can be back again, which will be around half an hour. So you're allowed to go have coffee as well. And then hopefully we'll all get back in this room.
Yeah. Thank you, Frank. For those that cannot be back afterwards, we have tackled a lot of topics, publications, but there is also the funding and the incentives. And I think that the point that Benji made is a very important one, because we're saying, yeah, Indaba is great, we want to learn from Indaba, but he's like, yeah, but people have a lot of barriers. This is right. Like, let's work together, really be directionally. So I just want to say that this is only the beginning. Each year we're doing a little step forward, and we're hoping that also with Yanis, with Magdalena, that we're like making this bigger, and we can really work together to benefit all of the institutions that are here, also benefiting nature. You're doing great work, I know, guys. You're doing a lot, but much more can be done together to solve these barriers that Benji was talking about, hopefully. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Anybody wants to ask the first question to these wonderful panel speakers and online? I'm sure you have a lot of questions.
Sekou has a question.
Sekou, exactly. Sekou, please, we trust you to ask the best possible question.
All right. Thank you all for the panel earlier. There was one thing, like, Benj, you have asked me to come, I will come. All right, so I am giving you a commitment that I will come and sit. But one of the questions that I have is, do we know what's happening within the rest of our community? Like how much travel is really happening? Because I think even hearing about others visiting others would be really useful. So that's one. And I'm happy that we finally have ACM presence. Shout outs to the president for being present. And I was telling Gurmar that because of your presence, I'm going to renew my membership this year. I'd been asking myself, why do I need to do it? But your presence is the reason why I will do it this year. But I think broader than that, how do we bring communities? So from an IEEE perspective, because I am active in IEEE, there's a society that has an alignment. So the Indaba Robotics Workshop aligns with the Robotics and Automation Society. Where's the equivalent that we could bridge that will allow some entity within the IEEE, within the IJCAI, within the AAAI, all of these organizations needs a home within the Indaba setting. And people need to be able to talk about that so that others can come as well.
If I may say something, first of all, I'm really glad that you will be renewing your membership and reaping the benefits of that this membership brings in. My presence here, at least in 2D, hopefully I will be there in 3D, in Indaba or some other event, is to understand and see how exactly these connections can happen, both with other sister societies, and you mentioned a few, or individually with Indaba or with what is happening in Africa. I truly believe what I said in the panel, that what you have been doing is really inspiring for me, and I think it can inspire the entire community of ACM and all the volunteers to both ACM to come to Africa and do things with you, but also for the African spirit influence what we do in ACM globally. So I really look forward to the next months on establishing foundations, finding the right connections between ACM and everything that is happening there and make it a reality. The focus is how to bring people together so that technology advances in the way that people want, in the way society wants. And the needs in Africa may be some the same, some different from the needs in other parts of the world. And we have to take that into account. But ACM can be the linchpin and can be the part that will bring some things that will be connected with the things that Africa will bring in and make 1 + 1 much greater than 2. I really look forward to the discussion in the next few months.
Thank you.
I know some researchers wanted to ask questions, so please, it's the moment to do that for any of the panel speakers. Some of the people that were in my mentoring session wanted to ask questions.
In the meantime, maybe I can also pick up on what
Yes.
Sekou was asking about. You know, I think we've seen so many cases now of people coming from other parts of the world, coming and spending some time here, whether it's for the Indaba or something else, and just like changing their worldview, getting really inspired, starting to work more seriously with other people on the continent, whether it's to, you know, solve a very particular problem that they were working on before, or like picking up new kinds of problems. And I keep wondering to myself, what would it mean if you'd go to any large conference anywhere in the world and even even a single-digit percentage of the attendees there, apart from the Africans, had spent some time here or were actively working here. Like, I just think about what that would do to change the culture of individuals, of groups, of institutions, of networks. And I think if we can just, there's probably a lot of misconceptions, and I think spreading the word about what's happening, about what the opportunities are. This isn't just come here and do charity work, but this is come here and do amazing things and be part of amazing projects and empower yourself, empower other people. And I think if we can kind of start changing that narrative a little bit to more closely align with the reality, I think there would be this kind of supercharging effect of, again, not just African researchers and communities, but globally.
Totally. Yeah, I really like one among the meetings that we had throughout the year, one sentence Aisha said one day, leading from Africa. That's what I'm interested in. And I think that's it's a very clear sentence that changes these misconceptions and really reflects what's happening here. And now I think that we have to maybe take some steps further to go beyond and to do more. Indaba is great, but it's once a week. Many students, I was asking all around, so how can we, what else, And they were like, yeah, Indaba is amazing. We all love it, but it's 1 week and there are the Indaba X, but we need more. And that's what we're here for, right? We're trying to figure out what are the next steps are. So I think Virginia wanted to speak, right?
I don't want to answer. I fully agree with you, what you say, and I think it would be great to see a much more interaction, both in all directions, from Africa to the world and from the world to Africa. I think that that's important, but maybe to the audience, I really would like to know from you what would be the ideal support that you would need to move your research forward, to move your mobility forward. So what we are generating lots of ideas, some possibilities, some questions, but from your perspective, from what you experience in your own countries, in your own universities or place of work, what would be the thing that from yourself would be the stepping stone for further your research, further your interaction and mobility? Maybe someone wants to share your own experience and ideas?
Hi everyone, my name is Emmanuel from Nigeria. So currently we are facing challenges. We're correcting code switch data for English Yoruba, and some of the challenges we've faced. So one, re-education. Like, people do not want to, give out data, and I feel like when we re-educate them on the essence of this data collection and the advantages, and build trust with them, they might be more open to releasing their data. Another thing is with good government officials, involving more of the government, let them create policies around data gathering and the likes. And I think the other one could be, maybe grants, funds that would help to scale, because one thing is, big, if Google decides to collect data now, they're going to do it massively and scale faster. But you can say the same for others that are just trying to gather this data. They would need time, resources, funds, compute to do all of this. So, yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Eric from Ghana. From my perspective, I think two things that might be very essential for early career researchers like myself will be, one, mentorship. And I say this from the point of view that in the beginning when I started doing research, it was almost as if I had to figure a lot of things out for myself. Even though I had gone through the basic education and done some undergraduate projects, we didn't get that level of attention that you would need at undergraduate level when you come into the workspace. But very fortunately for me, I reached out to one author in South Africa, even though I'm in Ghana, and I told her about my work, which was more about her work she had done about 10 years ago, and I was thinking about doing a similar thing from Ghana. She was very gracious with her time and decided to work with me throughout the whole journey, proposal, refine ideas. And in the beginning, my idea was to do the work in a very small space and talk about among my colleagues and friends and say, okay, we've done this, let's do this going forward. But having that guidance made me now think out of Ghana, because she brought out of Ghana perspective into that whole project for me to see things beyond my small community and begin to look outside and say, okay, this is what we do here in South Africa. This is how things are working here. When I did my projects, this was what I did. But over the years, certain improvements we've been able to achieve. So I didn't have to go and do everything from scratch. I had to leverage on her experience, her guidance, and I think that that is one thing that I see as very problematic in our settings here, where you don't always get the guidance you need to build projects that are meaningful. And even if you can, because of maybe your small perspective on a problem, you might not be able to do something quite impactful. That's number one. Number two for me is funding. Access to funding is not always easy, and if you're an early career researcher, that hurdle is very difficult to cross. And the training is not there, number one, and two, even if you have the training, you don't have the name. So you have to be able to work with other people who probably have a name, who can hold your hands or be prepared to hold your hands to open doors for you before you can even get your first funding or get something to support your research. So I think that if these two things are in place, it might be helpful for us to start from somewhere and then work on things that we see in our community as our own problems. Thank you very much.
Comment on this?
Yes, so thank you very much, both. I don't know if anyone else had... don't see no one. Two of the problems that you mentioned, first the one on data availability, data collection, and the one on funding are unfortunately universal. It's not a problem of Africa, it's a problem that we experience all over the world. There are some best practices, there are some ways, and like you say, to try to get funding first with someone which is more experienced or has a higher name. That helps, of course. So those are issues that I think that we all over the world, wherever we are, experience again and again, and maybe by talking together and sharing the experiences and the ways that we have done approach these issues in different places are very important to keep this discussion. The issue of mentorship that you mentioned, I think it's a very, very important. I think it's crucial, and I do think that is something that, and I look now for the organizers of this effort, that is something that really can be addressed together with the ACM, with ICHCAI, with all these international organizations, with the people that are working together. And I think that that would be something which I would like very much to see some type of proposal happening in next year's Indaba, that there is an international effort to create a mentorship program for Africa and with Africa.
Frank? Oh, sorry, Girma.
Everybody you go on.
I just want to comment on the two things, data and the mentorship. I think we were in the same mentorship program this morning with this question. It's very common, as Virginia said, to hear the challenge of data everywhere you go. Especially here at Indaba, every conversation is about data, data, data. And I wanted to also argue in a different way that always we shouldn't look for that big, large quality data. It doesn't exist. I want to challenge us. What did we do with the data we can access to? Most of the time we say, oh, we don't have data, and we jump into collecting our own data. And I do encourage people first to check what is around, which data can we find, even if we don't have for this specific language, what other language is very close to this language I can work on, I can build on, right? And that's something we need to think, of course, as a researcher as well. What can we do with the limited, small, low-quality data we have sometimes? That's where the creativity comes in, really. So data challenge is a universal problem, as it's mentioned, but I don't want us to be discouraged because we don't have data, we don't do much, not really. With the context we have, what can we do? What is the creativity about it? And always, if you go to government, nonprofits, academia, there is different data sources siloed here and there. It's not, it doesn't exist, but probably we don't know how to share around. Language data often mentioned as a big challenge, but in every country you have broadcasting, television, radio, all those platforms that have large amount of data. Do we spend the right time to work with them, to digitalize it so that it is accessible to AI? So this is just, again, to say no data is perfect, but there is always some data somewhere we can start with, and I would like to ask to take that into consideration. Mentorship, it's very key. That's what Indaba is about. But probably a few things to consider is Indaba is once annually, we are here. Indaba X, we have it almost in every country. We have specific groups across different sectors, in GeoAI, in AfriClimate, in health, in robotics. So if you look for mentorship, check, those local communities that are working on computer vision, language, and all that, so that, we build together. Again, data and mentorship is key, but we need to always look for what is the resource available so that we can start with, so that we can mentor with, because we have those in Africa, I would say. Frank?
Yeah, I knew that my answer would be much easier after you. So let me start with the mentorship. Actually, during the break, we were continuing the conversation with Giannis online, and we were talking actually about mentorship things and possibilities. For me, I think it's also...
Oh.
Yeah? Okay. So it's key in Indaba to have mentorships. What we would like is to broaden the set of possible mentors, but we also want to make it good mentors. So someone without any experience in Africa might not understand the circumstances here and give you advice that don't really apply very good here. So we also want to kind of start up mechanisms that we do that properly, so that when you get a mentor, you get a good one that actually helps you. So on the data sets, actually, it's already said twice that everyone of the whole world is saying we need more data, we need more data. I'm saying nowadays that we don't need more data, we need more intelligence. So intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. If the more intelligent you are, the less data you need. That's more or less what I'm saying. It's a bit black and white, but in the end it's true. If you all wait for enough data, a lot of people are not going to do anything. While if you look at the things that were done before, so we've done AI for more than 40 years. And 40 years ago, we didn't have all that data that we have nowadays. But we still did, I think, interesting things. So it's not that you cannot do anything without data. It's just you have to do things in a different way. And I think that's the kind of things we also should be looking at. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't get data and we shouldn't push things and combine things and do things to make it easier for people to actually do the things in the way they want to do. But if that's very difficult, don't sit and wait and look at other things. So that's the things that we want to tie into the kind of capacity building. We want to organize summer schools where we also teach about other methods that can be complementing or replacing some of the things that are done by machine learning. so that you actually get mixes that actually work more easily in circumstances where there's not a lot of not a lot of data.
Benji.
So, yeah, I know everyone's talking about the mentorship thing, but I really think it's key. So, a few years ago, one of the Indaba subcommittees built a mentorship platform through Baobab, and it's been, I don't know the statistics, but it's been very successful with hundreds of successful kind of mentorships that have been set up online from, anyone can apply for this and other people can apply to be mentors. And I think that's great, but I think there's a lot more that can be done in the space because, if we're all fighting to get funding and data, and as everyone says, but, if you know what you're doing, you can at least raise the probability of something you apply for being successful, or a partnership you're trying to build working out, or knowing who you should build a partnership with. But I think the bigger aspect is around culture, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, is research culture. So when I moved back to South Africa, having done my postgraduate studies in the UK, I'd been in a really, really big department there in Edinburgh, and I started building this really good team. I mean, my students are technically phenomenal. I don't think I can contribute anything technically to them, but I wanted to start writing papers, and there was just this resistance, and I couldn't quite understand it because my advisor had never put pressure on us to publish, but someone's device is ringing. Had never put pressure on us to kind of publish, but we'd all been pushing to publish all the time. And I couldn't quite understand this. And it was almost that we'd been in this environment where there were so many other people that had been doing this for decades that it was just the norm. And the question was, how do you go from a setting where there's just a way of doing things, or there isn't the way of doing things, to where there is the way of doing things? And this is kind of about setting the culture. And that's really hard if you don't have people there that are aware of what things could look like, that have spent time in other places and can help you kind of analyze where the gaps are. And so, while I think different kind of mentorship platforms where you can come with specific questions are very useful, there's a deeper question of are you even asking the right questions? Do you know what you're missing? Do you know how you could be doing things? Do you know that there could be other ways to apply for grants or think about data? And these might not be things that you would just think about in a very quick one-on-one mentorship interaction. And that's why I think these relationships and building partnerships are more important, where there's people that get to know each other at a deeper level and can say, wait, hang on, we've been working together for a while and you haven't done things this way, or you've been trying to do things that way. What's going on there? Can we dig into this? And I think there's a lot of value that comes out of those kinds of relationships, and I've definitely benefited from those kinds of relationships myself.
Sibu wants to speak. Can I say just something very quickly before you, Sibu? Thanks. I totally agree with Benji. For me also, what has worked very well is building my personal network. Trying to see how can I contribute to what Frank is doing, if anything, because he's amazing. So can I bring my minuscule contribution to that line of work? So I believe that mentoring is definitely a very important topic. And but also, I think it's important to think, how can I contribute to that so that it's bidirectional and each of us builds our own network of collaborators. And when you have that, it all adds up, right? Then it's easier also to get funding if you're working with, I don't know, Benji, Virginia, and Aisha and somebody else than to do it by yourself. So for me, building a network is something that it's key for everything, for funding, for publishing, for capacity building. So, and always thinking, how can I contribute to that network? So that's, at least in my opinion, it's important. Sibu.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that, Georgina. So the one thought I had around funding, in fact, last night I was attending another seminar event, and we had one of the government ministers, their deputy minister. So he was, elaborating a lot on some of the programs that they have around AI, and you know, a lot of the students actually didn't know about it. So I think, you know, it's also important just to keep abreast of what is happening within our space in terms of funding, National Research Foundation funding, funding from government departments that may be funding early career researchers, et cetera, or funding specific projects, because there's often opportunities to then apply for those funding. And if they're targeting specifically early career researchers, you know, so they're looking for people that don't necessarily have a name for themselves yet, but people that have interesting ideas and they're willing to support that and build your careers from there. So the other thing is just to be aware also of, you know, some of the large programs that may be happening on the continent. I'm thinking, for example, under the DSI Africa program, which is about, you know, looking at data science for health. It's a large NIH-funded program. And yes, they had funded primarily some of the large research hubs, but there had been a lot of funding calls for pilot projects, for supplementary projects, and all of these were actually aiming at early career researchers. So I think it's good, as Georgina say, you know, have a community of practice, have a network that you follow, but also be aware of what's happening within your space, both from, whether it's from a government perspective or various large research programs that are receiving funding, because there could be subsequent opportunities to actually apply for funding as an early career researcher. So that's the other thing, contribution towards the issue around funding.
Thanks, Sibu. Yanis?
Yes, very few things on mentorship and a few more on data. Georgina said that the most important thing for mentorship, for funding and everything is networking. And this is for everything in life, actually, not just for what we're discussing here. In the good sense, I mean, who you know can open up doors for you, and then you can move on. So hopefully, as Frank said, we have been discussing at the break, and we'll have more extensive discussions on how ACM can help with networking. It has 120,000 members all around the world, and trying to actually increase our footprint around it in a way that serves the needs of the various local communities. So a mentorship can be, and it's also very important. Mentorship is very important, and we put it in the, if you want, in the at the forefront of many of the activities that we want to bring. It's happening, but not at the extent that it's that we want. So this is a good opportunity for ACM to help, but also be helped, because as Georgina said, mentorship is bidirectional, and I can see African leaders mentoring people outside of Africa on how things can be done on this or the other topic. With respect to data, first of all, my specialty is data management. So hearing about data is always music to my ears. And Frank is very right that for many years, data was not as important in AI. But let me say that that AI had not very much impact. The bottom-up data-based AI in combination with the availability of tremendous amounts of data and very strong computation is what brought AI into the center of attention and the impact that it's having. So even when combined with top-down AI, symbolic AI, which I think this combination is the way of the future, still will need data. But it also said, let's not wait to find lots of data. Let's see what we can do with the data that we have. One of the things I want to mention is this concept, relatively recent concept of data sovereignty. This is everyone being protective around the data, especially at the national level. And this kills research, kills technology, and also kills the many opportunities of impact in society, because societal challenges are not national. they are global, they are regional. And unless we can bring data together from multiple regions, then we won't be able to have the impact that that is needed. And I'm not sure how data sovereignty has penetrated Africa, how good the member nations in Africa collaborate on data. But at least at the scientific level, we should be promoting this integration, this interoperability, this bringing together of data across borders and across regions and across nations in order for us to have, using then the technology, the highest impact of all. This is not technology, this is policy, this is, if you want, partly sociology and psychology, but we have to be interacting with the right people in order to achieve this data availability, but also data, I wouldn't say aggregation, but bringing data together from multiple places.
Thank you, Yanis. Aisha, I don't know if you would like to comment anything on mentorship, networking, funding. We've tackled a lot of topics.
Sure, maybe just piggybacking on the mentorship side, and just to kind of share like personal journeys. You'll have different mentors usually at different points of time in your life, and I tend to think of networking or mentorship as like my team. You know, who are the people who are around me who are better than me in these specific areas that I can always reach out to help me to, get to be where they are. And so you'll have a diverse set, especially for the students. It's not necessarily, okay, you find one person and this person's going to help you through your career or your academic journey or just life. Usually it's multiple types of people with various skill sets that you have as a part of, your network. I think maybe network, I like to call it team because it's usually a specific small set of people that just are looking and happy to lift you up in the areas that they're strong at. So, don't think you need to just find one. It's okay to evolve from one to another. And you'll also have periods where you don't have as much mentorship, and that's okay, that's fine. I think you'll kind of have a gut feeling like, gee, I wish I could ask so-and-so this question. And that's kind of a good trigger to say, hey, I should be reaching out to people who are more experienced in this area. So it's a bit of a journey, and it's multiple people that are supportive in terms of mentors in your network.
Thank you. To add to that, maybe I would say, we're discussing this in our mentorship session. Maybe the first step also is, who would you like to have as a mentor in an ideal world, Because sometimes it's like, who is the best person in the topics I'm interested in the research that I'm doing? And if you think that's the best person, probably the other person is also interested in the work that you're doing, right? So don't be shy and connect, because what is the worst thing that can happen? That you don't get an answer? Well, it's okay, and you can try somebody else. So try to reach out to these people in Indaba, in other communities, like build your community, because they also have an interest in what you are doing. So identify these potential mentors and contact them. I think that's the first. Once you've done that, you've already half the way forward, I think. Okay, we have 2 minutes left. Maybe I just wanted to mention one last topic that in my personal view is key to the Indaba community and to the ecosystem of research in Africa from what I've seen, is this hybrid between entrepreneurship and academia and industry, right? And this doesn't happen in other parts of the world. And I think that's a richness that you guys have, that in ACM, in Nature, in many other places, we have to learn from, because people here may want to make things happen. And publishing is a way for them to get some recognition, to then be able to actually make this happen. It's the means, it's not the goal, right? And having a company is also the means, it's not the goal. So I think that's a way that has to help us think, all of us, on the next steps. How can we help put all these different means to make this AI happen for everybody? right? So, Girmao, I think you want to say something.
Yeah, before we finish, actually, this is like two-way communication, as you said.
Right.
And Frank mentioned this is a mix of academic and industry. So I would like to ask the audience actually a quick question, if we have a few minutes, which is, we are here from Google, IBM, and Microsoft Research. And we often try to do a few things here and there in turn. We may select a few, we may hire a few people, we may give computing. What does big tech can help? I ask this question because it's Indaba and it's a safe space. What do you think we could do more so that we can be helpful for research? This is just helpful for us to understand better and potentially go back and reflect. So I would appreciate if we get 1, 2, 3 feedbacks so that we can do better going forward.
Thank you for the question. My name is Jan, I'm from Senegal. I guess looking at the perspective we have, what we can expect from big tech is understanding your understanding of the field and where we're going. I have the feeling that sometimes communities or smaller research labs like ours, we may going in the wrong direction. Just because we don't know that maybe a big tech is already working on that, they nailed something and find a solution for something, and we keep working on that without knowing that. So it will be amazing if we can have this kind of high-level choice, ranking of the thing that could be interesting for local players to do, versus the thing that you guys are super well positioned to do.
Also, if you could fill in a feedback form for us, it's right on the screen, if you haven't done so.
Yes, do it.
So the big tech guys, it's for you. Microsoft, Google. Is it a way that maybe you could give some lines to?
Yeah, I said specifically, thanks for the question. I think the big tech is quite big, as you know, and everyone has, a scope in it. I was specific to research, but if you ask me specifically about Microsoft AI for Good Lab, it's like open source is our way to go. So there is nothing we own, data, model, product. It's like more of philanthropic part of Microsoft. So by nature, what we do is out there. If you go to our website, all the projects we do, the partners, the data, the model should be there. But I agree, that's what I mean by communication in the morning. We need to communicate better among each other, who is doing what, so that we don't reinvent the wheel, rather we build on top of each other. Yeah.
So we're getting to the end
Yes.
of this panel session. I just want to say that although I think it's very interesting, this, of course, you should see this as the start of something much bigger and more organized. So I hope in 5 or 10 years' time you say, I was there in that workshop when we started talking about all these things. The reason why we don't have all the answers and why maybe we are sometimes looking a bit less organized is because we are so committed and so we want to push so quick that we don't have all the organization there yet, but we're going to get there. But in the meantime, we cannot wait for 2 or 3 years and leave you with nothing. So looking back, I think we already have ISCAI proceedings for last year. We will have that again this year. Actually, I don't think we mentioned that yet. We had this piece in Nature, where actually we could promote what AI in Africa was. And they started off actually Nature starting asking us, can you tell how Africa is catching up with AI in the States? And that also got me pissed off. So why do we have to talk about catching up with the US? We are doing African AI. And whether that's catching up or something different, we should tell about that happening. And they actually picked it up and I did a very good piece. And so I'm very happy. So we get things slowly done. So we're now starting to talk with ACM. We had Nature here in the panel. So we're getting some big players that can support us in more activities. And we hope that we actually get things better organized every year. So one of the things that we talked about, and we'll see how that works, is that we hope to be next year not a workshop, but some part of the main conference and session, and that we actually get into the main organization in a way that we can continue the conversation throughout the year. Because now we had a few questions from a few people, but I bet there are a lot more things that we should be discussing. And we should not limit it to 1 hour or so in this workshop, but that should be involving the whole Indaba community. And we hope that we can start up things that we can actually get that going as well, so that we have continuous feedback and we grow much quicker. So I think for me, that's the lesson of today. We're already doing a lot of very exciting things, and we're bound to do a lot more.
Would anyone, everybody would like to say like one last sentence or last thought was last from the session, from being here, from the work we're doing together? Benji.
I guess there's a lot to say because there's a lot going on and there's still a lot to do. But that's what community is all about, and that's why it's important to have people doing different things in different directions, from different places, with different motivations, but all kind of caring about the same general progression of, you know, making, I guess, to be cliched, the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't just one initiative. This isn't just one layer. It's a whole lot of pieces coming together, and really requires everybody to be involved.
Totally. Thanks. Virginia.
Yeah, I never really know what to say about last words or whatever. But one thing which was coming up in the beginning of the panel was talking about some of the companies and organizations that treat AI and the developments as being a race. I don't think that there is no race at all. A race means that there is a finish line, and then you see when at the finish line who got there first. There is no finish line in AI, but most importantly, a race expects that we all go in the same direction. And I think that at this moment, and that Indaba does demonstrate that it is especially important to explore different directions, different methods, different techniques, different opportunities, different applications. And for that, we need to be looking much more as being explorers than as being competitors in a race.
Thank you. Girma?
Mine is, again, quick. AI in Africa should be focused on our key problems based on our local context, including data. On top of that, let's communicate better. Let's remember those problem-driven, data-centric or context-centric, and better communication. Thank you.
Aisha?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of you. You all, your participation in this conference, your commitment to this conference, your commitment to each other, your commitment to science, asking tough questions is essential. You all are building the tools for my children. You all will be my children's mentors. So I think, take this spirit. Don't always look one way. Look to yourself. I'm inspired by you. So first is a thank you. And then the second point is don't be discouraged. It'll look like everyone's doing everything and you can't do this or you can't do that. I always say I swim in no and failure. I don't care. Like, failure's for free. I didn't ask for it. It just comes. So don't be discouraged. Keep going. You all are the future. There's so many things that need to be done. Ask tough questions. Ask tough questions to each other. But keep the spirit of community and the people first, and I think this will thrive into the future. So again, a huge thank you to all of you all.
Thank you.
This is for you.
Yanis.
It has been a wonderful experience for me to be participating in this panel, the two panels if you want. Here, I learned a lot. I got a little bit better taste of what the event is, but also what the African context is. And I want to emphasize a little in the taste. It's a lot more to understand, and I'm even more exciting of what may come later. And I liked Frank's point about 5 or 10 years from now and what we can do. So let me say, and by the way, besides my ACM hat, I am European, so there is a EU-Africa platform where possible common funding can be had and collaborations can be fostered. So I want to pursue this, understand it better, and possibly bring that dimension into the discussion. And I want, this may be the last words, but I think that these last words are the first words for what is to come, and I look forward to that.
Thibaut.
Well, thanks for that. Thank you for being part of this panel and part of this initiative. So the thought that comes to my mind, I like the last comment from the audience, which was about we have to get to know a bit more about what big tech and business in general, how they are developing AI and perhaps even leveraging AI to know what it is as a community of researchers, let's say within Indaba, what we can, continue to contribute. I think that that's a challenge on us to make sure that, yes, we sometimes sponsor these conferences, but maybe have a stronger, more candid conversation around, what it is that we're doing and what are the areas that we really are not prioritizing more from a business perspective, and where there's an opportunity. It's not that those problems are not important, but maybe from a business perspective, it's not something that we are prioritizing from in terms of research. And there's quite an opportunity then for the community to get engaged in that. But I think, the takeaways for me are in terms of the C's. So let's continue to create, AI that really solve some of the challenges that we have in our own communities, businesses, etc. Let's continue to connect amongst ourselves and amongst our colleagues globally so that there's a better understanding of what it is that we are doing to drive developments both in foundational AI, but also in the applications space. And I think let's communicate to make sure that there is a better understanding of what it is that we are doing coming straight, from the source. So I think, yeah, those are the key takeaways for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, the panel speakers. Thanks, the attendees. From my side, also building on what has been said, as Aisha was saying, keep pushing, keep going. You're really, really good. You're I'm amazed of some of the projects that you're doing. I'm like, wow, I wish I could be doing that. How can we collaborate? So from our side, we are also trying to make this grow. Like we're delivering, as Frank was saying, we delivered fellowships, we delivered publications. So we are there and we're making this grow. There is a lot of work behind the scenes, and we will deliver more next time. Okay, so thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Georgina, for orchestrating all this.
Yes, thank you.